so we came up with these alternatives and we said, well, how do we evaluate them? We want to see how much development potential they have, how well do they improve access and mobility, again, to the communities that they're serving and going through. We're looking at what kind of environmental resources do they hit along the way, whether it's hazardous waste or whether it's part of the natural environment. What kind of community resource impacts are there? Are we impacting cemeteries? Are we impacting rec centers? That type of thing. And then and taking it down again, the residential impacts, commercial, business impacts, and then transit and freight impacts. So those are what we're measuring, and then lastly we're looking at the cost of the alternatives as well. So this is an evaluation matrix that we put together. There's numbers that kind of back everything up, but to try to show how we evaluate these on a relative basis, relative to each other. What you see at the top, think of green being good and red being bad, again on a relative basis of everything. And what we're seeing here is above this dotted line is what we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to get the new frontage and the acreage adjacent to it for redevelopment and improve the access and mobility. Below that first criteria, these are the things we're impacting along the way, as you saw there. So this is what you're trying to get, this is what you're creating along the way, and this is what it costs. Now we put a little illustration up here just so you don't have to try to remember. We actually changed this from the last meeting, just so you can kind of see the pictures up there. And the color keys that you see right here are actually aligned with those four alternatives. So alternative 1, which went up 55th across Woodland, what you see there is it doesn't create much new frontage and it doesn't activate much land for redevelopment. And because we're not making much change, it didn't do much to the access and mobility. So it didn't score well as far as what we were trying to do. When we look at what it impacts, you'll see a couple green dots down here. It's kind of a you get what you pay for type thing. We didn't impact much, we didn't get much, and therefore we didn't impact much. Although we did see a lot of community impacts. If you go down Woodland Avenue and you start looking there's a lot of churches, there's a lot of cemeteries, there's a lot of there's police, fire, there's a lot of community services there that if you try to widen that road would be very difficult. So we saw a lot of impacts there. And on a cost basis, it was kind of a moderate because you're still impacting a lot of railroads and other things along the way. Alternative 2, which is the one that's kind of started to the north and then came crossed back over the trench and went south, we start to get a lot more green. We open up some land on the north side up here that could be developed, and we open up some land down here adjacent to the alternative that could be developed. So we're seeing better as far as new frontage and redevelopment, so it scored pretty well up there. On an access and mobility side, it did better because now we're creating a more direct route and we can start to interface with more of the local streets down here. On the impact side there, you see we do pretty good too. We got 2 green dots in here, and we've got environmentally kind of neutral, a whole lot less community impacts as we got away from Woodland and all the services that were on there. Residentially, it scored the best out of all of them as far as impacts, but commercial impacts and costs, you see, did not score very well. And what that was associated with, if you remember when I said we came in behind Orlando and we took out their loading docks and really messed up their operations. So that was part of it there. And then just the tremendous cost of trying to get across 46 sets of rail tracks on a curved alignment and hook it into the freeway. So very challenging up there if that could even be done. Alternative 3, shown in red, which stayed along the whole north side, you still have a lot of cost associated with it, but you're not paying for replacing all of Orlando Bakery, so that helped. But if you see up here, alternative 3, which stayed on the north side of that rail trench, there's not as much vacant land to be redeveloped up there. And on the bottom side of what the impacts are here, now you start seeing a lot of red coming in here as far as a lot of residential impacts, a lot of commercial impacts. That was the one that again went through the new Juvenile Justice Center. So you didn't get a whole lot, but you hit a whole lot. And then alternative 4, which is where we pulled away along that south side, you see we created that new frontage on both sides, or addresses on both sides of the road, and it scored the best of everything we're trying to create. And on the impact side, you'll see it's kind of our more neutral. You don't have any of the green, but you don't have much of the red. You'll see one here that's kind of funny. It's 2 colors. And that's associated right here in the St. Hyacinth neighborhood. And if you're at our meeting that we had 3 years ago, we realized again there's a high traffic volumes here. We heard a lot of concerns of you're going to build this big road. And right now the problem was with the train station, you had to cross 55th to get to RTA. So now the train station's coming to the east side, you're going to put this road between us and the train station. So we're going to get killed trying to cross that road. So tremendously sized intersection, we heard that, we recognized that. So we started looking at how do we deal with this high traffic volume. So we started looking at alternatives on how we could possibly grade separate that intersection. So you're not a big interchange per se, but where we could send traffic, maybe all that traffic is just trying to go through and not have them stop there and go under. So we came and we presented back in 2006 a number of alternatives there, and one of them is back on the boards in the back if you get a chance to take a look at that. That's one of our concepts. But what we found is we can deal with the traffic, but typically, you know, you add cost, which isn't necessarily bad, but you also create more impacts. As we look at some of these, when you start talking about a grade separation and access to the neighborhood from 55th into the boulevard, you start creating more residential impact. So we realize there's going to be kind of a balance here, but what we're saying is depending on how that shakes out, you create more impacts or you create less. And we have some alternatives that actually minimize some of those impacts as well. So that's how the alternatives to date were scored. So what we're saying here is now we're saying here's what we're recommending we study further. Again, no build alternative still on the table. You're not picking A or B. You're letting us know what you think about all of them. This again is our high traffic area, an area we're recommending we further study and coordinate. But what we've said here is let's stop studying the part that goes up 55th and across Woodland because we didn't get anything from it. Let's stop looking at the area over here due to the tremendous cost and difficulties in trying to do that, and we create additional impacts, especially along that whole northern corridor. And what we see different here on this alternative 2, we call it it's kind of a modified portion of alternative 2 that used to come in here behind Orlando Bakery. Now we're saying is, well, we kind of like this option of coming around here, so we kind of rotate it. Instead of coming up this way, we rotate it and connect it in to where the other alternative was at. But really with the study area, what we're still saying is anywhere within here, we still have wiggle room. So we're not saying it's going to come exactly here or exactly here. We're saying it's this general concept, but it could move throughout here. And then we also have to see, as we look at these alternatives, how do we now interface with some of these local streets? Because when you start cutting through on an angle, you can't, you got to figure out how everything kind of hooks back up. So this is what we're saying. We're eliminating alternatives 1 and 3, combining 2 and 4, and we're going to study in more detail in this refined study area. So step 5, we already talked about all the environmental field studies that are going on. Context-sensitive solutions, again, is hearing the community's input. What do you want for the road? Do you want bike lanes on the road? Do you want a bike path? Do you want green space? What kind of landscaping elements? What kind of themes do you want? How do you want this road to look? Coordinating the land use with all the activities that the city is doing and seeing how it all fits together. Doing a lot more engineering analysis, a lot more traffic engineering, studying how the roads function, finding the best geometrics for them, updating our cost estimates, reaching out to the public in meetings like this. All that gets wrapped up in what is called a conceptual alternative summary report that will get submitted to ODOT and Federal Highway, and then we'll have another public meeting and present to you our findings for that. And we're anticipating probably, in the April-May time period, something like that. What we want to do is, first, as Terry mentioned, that we're going to go into a question and answer period because we want to make sure we hear all of your comments and concerns, and we're going to be writing these down.